All right. Nicely done. Before going on with our subject, I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your cards and your messages of good cheer and confidence. And I'm sure that we all realize behind each one of us we are united in Him. If we continue that way, we're bound to reach our goal because we are raised in His great presence. And so I thank you very much. Also, once more to thank Mr. and Mrs. Eckhart for the decorations of the church. And last Sunday I did not have a chance to explain the chakras of the spine, which you see in the little pulpits. I think it is very nice to put a little of our philosophy of truth and reality along with the time-honored Christmas tree, don't you? I think we all like it, and it is done very nicely. The different chakras which you see and the rays which I have explained, and also to the spiritual vision, the colors are there. But the greatest of all is that the great supreme center at the top, known as the thousand-petal lotus, is the home of God and His angels right within us. And we can realize those things if we turn from material things to things of the soul. As Mr. Cook read so graphically, I was almost right there in the cage myself about that, the way the Tiger Swami got after the tiger, so we have to get after these desires and outward things with the same vim and vigor. And as he exercised that great will which he did, so can we exercise the same will to find and know the one Father behind all things. And so that takes us to our subject, the call of the soul. The call of the soul simply means to drink. To drink of the waters of which Jesus spoke, the unending bliss of God, which is right within each and every one of us. Rather than to be taken up with outward things, material desires, let us turn within to the fountain of all things, the presence of God, His great consciousness, His bliss, which is our own consciousness. If we can but remove the idea of being separated from God, that's all. But He has suggested it so strongly. As I said in the prayer, it takes only one thing, but it takes that, and that is the great love of God to resolve all these binding things which prevent us from knowing that there is no separation between us. God, thou and I are one, never apart. Thou and I, O Father, never apart. And so that's the call of the soul. The call of the soul rather than the call of ego consciousness with material desires and all the troubles that come with it. The call of our own being within the presence of God. Let us say just a few words first about the soul. In the Bhagavad Gita we read, the soul is never born, neither does it die, nor having been ceaseth any more to be. Unborn, perpetual, eternal, and ancient. It perishes not in the perishable body. The soul cannot be the body. Why? Because the body was born. Being born, it must have an ending. That which is born, that which has a beginning, must have an ending. But the presence of God within us always was and always will be as our soul. If we but realize that through right meditation, join and become one with the presence of God, the soul within us, then we will separate our consciousness attached to the body. The soul, or all souls, are rays of spirit. And spirit being immortal, so is every soul immortal. The soul, or souls, are atoms of spirit. And as such, do not pass away. They are above, beyond time and space, and exist in the eternal now. If we but realize that God is now, right this moment, but we keep thinking about past things and also hoping in the future. And those are both false conditions. The reality is the presence of God right within us now, our own soul. And as our souls are raised of the one ocean of spirit, of which we sang in our chant, I am the bubble, make me that great ocean of thy presence, God. As the spirit is immortal, so is the soul immortal. Can you not see why the call of the soul is so important? It means the call to eternal life. The soul is the real doer. The body being subject to change, being under the influence of certain conditions. When those conditions are removed, as we see in death, the conditions of this existence of the body passes away. Therefore, underneath that is the soul, which is the real doer. I remember Master used to always give the illustration about the cake of ice. Under certain conditions, it stays. The cake of ice, with the different characteristics of its temperature and its weight, and it occupies space and all that. Remove the conditions, where is it? Bring the heat on, so to speak. Where is it? It never was it? Things of the past have never been. When you bring in the light of God, they have never been. As that cake of ice. When it passes away, where was it? Not where is it, where was it? It never was, except in idea. And those ideas have to be eliminated. And they can only be eliminated because of the strong suggestion of God producing this cosmic dream with its seeming reality. They can only be eliminated by one thing, and that's the realization of your soul within, which is the presence of God in each and every one of us. Realize that. And therefore, soul is the eternal flame of God in this little bodily vehicle. And its call is supreme, because only when we turn toward the soul, only when we turn toward that eternal flame of God which is in us, will we be satisfied and will we have fulfillment. Why do we wait? Why does each one of us wait? Because we are asleep in God's cosmic dream. He didn't want it that way, but it is so. He wanted us to enjoy it, but not be attached to it so that we forget Him, that's all. God doesn't expect anything else from us. He wants us to enjoy His gifts, but He does not want us to forget the giver, and that giver is the soul of each and every one of us. Souls are rays of spirit. Spirit is immortal, so is each soul immortal. Let us understand that. That's all God asks us. Just a little time. How many give a little time each day? I know many of you do here because you're members. Give more time. Give more time each day. And when you give more time, soon His great love will burst in upon you, and you'll see that there is no past or future, just now, the presence of God. That's the call of the soul. That's the call of the soul to once more know that it is the presence of God, it is God in your vehicle. He's in every vehicle, from the smallest atom to the greatest creation, world upon world. God is there. That's what we must realize, and we are that life, that great love of the one Father. We are that. But we've forgotten it. That's the call of the soul to once more regain that. And so the ego simply means that the soul, the presence of God within us, is attached to the vehicle. And with that attachment, look what comes. You don't even have to read the papers. Just introspect yourselves, and you'll find there's confusion and trouble. Why? Because the soul of which we are speaking has become attached to the body. And all human endeavor is going either one of two ways. There's a perpetual struggle between the pull of God on one side, with the resulting bliss and peace, an understanding of this creation and this life in which we find ourselves. And on the other side is the pull of the ego. And that's our soul attached to the body. Ego causes all the trouble because the soul forgets his immortal nature and is ruled, so to speak, by these mundane desires. And so that's what goes on within each and every one of us, this great struggle. And it will cease when we heed the call of the soul and put aside the call of the ego and material desires. And when you feel your soul within you, whatever comes, your way, so to speak, will make no difference. Having God with you, whatever he gives you, you're satisfied with it. If he gives you nothing, you're still satisfied because you have everything. He is everything. Understand that. God is all. And so as the struggle goes on, let us get out of it. Let us act as we should as children of God, not be subject to the binding qualities of this outward existence, this material existence, but realize the freedom of the presence of God within. And every one of us can feel that, because every one of us is a ray of God. That's the call of the soul, isn't it? Isn't that far greater than following material desires? When you know yourself, they'll never satisfy you. When you know you'll never be satisfied until you listen to the soul within, that's the call of the soul. That's the call of silent God. He doesn't say much. In fact, he says nothing. Once in a while he speaks. But he says, if you do not turn toward his call, he patiently says, and we can learn a lot from him, I will wait. I will wait. That's what we have to be like. We have to be with others that way. Patient. Understanding. And when they do all manner of things against us, we should be thankful because we're nearing God. You see the lives of all the saints. Follow the same pattern. Persecution. That's the way. But rejoice, as it says in the Bible, because when that comes, you're nearing God. Realize that. So heed the call of the soul. Characteristics of the soul, just one or two words of metaphysical aspect. Characteristics of the soul, besides what I've read in the Gita, is that the soul belongs to the underlying or noumenal region. The phenomenal region we know in this worldly existence, the world of phenomena. But the soul is of the underlying cause, so to speak, the noumenal region, the cause of things, because behind all this drama of life is God's great presence, his great love. Although you cannot see it with outward eyes, but as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said to Arjuna, my form cannot be seen with ordinary eyes. I give you a single eye of wisdom, whereby you can see, perceive the underlying region of the soul and the noumenal region of the cause of things. We're taken up with the effects, with the phenomena. We will never be satisfied because the phenomenal passes away, but the underlying noumenal does not. Just like we have this body, this phenomenal aspect, this isn't real. We see it pass away all the time, but underneath that is the reality, the noumenal part, the spiritual part of each one of us. And that does not pass away. It was never born, and it cannot pass away. The soul is unborn, perpetual. Cannot pass away. And so, how to recognize the call of the soul? Psychology will not do it. You cannot find the soul by being psychoanalyzed, because psychoanalysis is a product of the soul. It's a ray of the soul, just as your mind and your intellect are rays of the soul. They cannot tell you anything about the soul, but right within you, right within me, is the soul's power as the presence of God through the intuition of the soul, which knows all things, which sees in front, behind, above, beneath, feels all things instantaneously. That's the power of the soul. And when you meditate deeply and throw out these material things, and that power of the soul comes within you, then you can know reality. Then you can recognize the call of the soul. But these other outward things which you follow, rituals, outward form of religion, they're just passed down, are they not? You will not find your freedom in those. You'll find your freedom when you get beyond them, into the presence of God within you, into the eternal now, as the Master says, right now. But we keep putting it off. We put off meditation. Well, you know how it is. I'm a little tired today. The folks dropped in last night, and you know, time went, and I had no time. But you had time for the folks. I don't say to throw them out and say, now it's time to meditate. But God shows you how to do it if you really want Him. He will make it possible. His Master told me one time, he says, God is so human. He says He's so human when you know Him. The least little thing you want. If you really love God, the least little thing you want, He will do it. He will give it to you. He's so human, every aspect is in God. Next Sunday we'll discuss those things. He is so human that if you really want Him, He takes care of you in a far better way than you can yourself. Or your father, or your mother, or your relatives, or anybody. God is the real one. Heed the call of His presence within you. Heed the call of the soul. And so, the soul must be understood spiritually, as I have said, because we are raised of the Spirit. Outward things, psychology, properties of senses, mind, and intellect, they are rays of the soul. How can they show you anything about the soul? Now, I don't say just burn up all the books, because we have the AY, which is a wonderful book, but it takes you to the place where you can apply these things I'm telling to you. But do not depend on those. When the Master was leaving Boston years ago, and he had stayed with us 3 years, and there was an intimate relationship, he saw that there was too much dependence upon outward things, even in the form of his great presence. So he said, I was saying, what are we going to do, sir, when you go? What are we going to do? What are we going to do with these children and all that? He took the whole load for a while. But it was too good to last. He took the load of the children and all things, and our little controversies he took and smoothed them out. But it was too good to last. So he said, listen. He said, never mind what happens to me. In other words, get rid of the crutch. Never mind what happens to me. That life which you see within you at the Christ Center is far greater than I am. That's God Himself. You see how great He was? The greatest friend, because He helped me to get out of the dependence on outward things, even in His personality and His form. But He told me to depend only on the truth that was in Him, in which He expressed the Christ consciousness, which is seen as the light at the Christ Center at this point. Depend on that. Know that. Merge in that. That's the call of the soul. Know that. And so when he passed away, quite some time later, at first I felt as if the bottom had been pulled out from under me. Then I remembered his words. And I was sustained, because he is in that Christ consciousness, as all great saints are one with it. So is each and every one of us one with that. That's where we'll find no separation. If you love your family and your children, know that Christ consciousness, and you will not be separated from them. If you do not know it, you will be, because every one of us passes away. That's the call of the soul. That's the greatest wisdom that you can know at this time, is to know that place where there is no separation, where we are all one. As the Master said to me, let your life be a spiritual example for others to follow to our one abode of light, where all will meet who live and do right. Isn't that wonderful? That's where we all want to go. And in that great light of Christ within us, none other than the presence of God, in that we find all satisfaction, all fulfillment, no strife, just God's great love. That's the call of the soul. And so, the soul qualities can be perceived by merging the spiritual eye of which Jesus spoke, the kutesta, right here. That's where God can be perceived. The call of the soul is calling you through that great spiritual eye. The light of Christ is in it at this point. It is spoken of in many ways as the star of the east, the star of intuition, the white stone of revelation, the morning star, the eye of intuition, the cloud of virtue of the Vedas, refers to the one thing. The spiritual eye at this point, the single eye spoken of Jesus. That's the way you have to travel. That's where the call of the soul is coming into you. Keep your attention there. Merge in that. Meditate rightly at that area, in that region. And you will know the presence of God within you. As Jesus said, if thy eye is single, thy body will be filled with light. What light? Not solar light, spiritual light. The light of Christ consciousness, which is none other than God the Father in His creation. That's the call of the soul. The soul is pulling you every time if you look there. And when people first take up the path of self-realization, the first thing, usually the first thing they say, I feel a great pulling at this point. I feel a pulling at this point. A stickiness. What is it? That's the pull of the soul. A call of the soul. One little thing happened in Hollywood Church. After the service, these people come up, shake hands and other things, and these three little Japanese people came up. And they asked to be blessed, which I do because the Master told me to do it, that's all. I realize I'm nothing, and until we all realize we're nothing, God will not flow. But when the Master asks you to do something, when He has given you everything you have, then you're happy to do it, because you're simply trying to do God's will, that's all. So these three little Japanese came up, and in their broken Japanese, or whatever, English rather, they asked to be blessed. One of them had been up, so I blessed the three of them. And they went down the aisle, see, and when they got to the back of the church, three of them were trying to pull it off. Most beautiful thing. Well, the soul was pulling them. They thought it was something external. They were trying to get it off. So, see, in little ways, God is so human. He points out to you in beautiful ways the underlying reality, the underlying noumena of the presence of the soul. And so, our great Larry DiMarcia has said this, which I want you to remember, because yoga is all right. Yoga is very essential. Kriya Yoga is the fastest known method to realize the presence of the soul, but that is not all. As he says, you must practice. You must manage self-surrender at the Christ center. Self-surrender at the kutesta. Kriya Yoga and yoga will give you the realization of the light of the single eye of which Jesus spoke. But then you must fully surrender to God, because when there's any little reservation left of any material nature, God's love will not come. Understand that. And so he says that manage self-surrender at the kutesta. And this kutesta may be defined as a point with a circle, or rather a sphere, with the center everywhere. You are the center of the great eternal sphere of God. You are the center of that. And every time you make contact with it, you are in contact with eternity. That's where the call of the soul is found, not in outward things, not in the following of senses and desires, and altruistic motives, no matter how high they are, they will not give you God. But at the Christ Center, with simple humbleness in your heart, a deep desire, loving attention to know Him, you are the center of eternity. That's why God will respond to you through the Kutesta, the single eye. Larry Marsh's words are so wonderful. And as he says, that is, you can start with the center anywhere. So you don't have to wait till you perfect your meditations. You don't have to wait till next week. Now! The center is there. Now, right now. You are in eternity the moment you lift your consciousness and eliminate outward consciousness and material things. You're in eternity right at this point. Realize that. Realize that in Revelation when it says the kingdom of God is with men. It is not something outside, not something foreign. It's right there within us, if we but lift our consciousness to the Christ center. And so, in conclusion, as the time is going on, listen to the soul's cry. Listen to the call of the soul. Choose constant God. Aren't those wonderful words? Choose constant God. He doesn't change. And don't be taken up. Don't be sidetracked by material desires. And because your soul is a ray of spirit, you're bound to win. You're bound to win in the end because your soul is a ray of spirit. Emerson said, when the soul knows that it is going to meet its cosmic beloved, it will gladly wait 1,000 years. That's what the pull of God is. That's what the pull of the call of the soul is. It has God's great love in it. Let us realize that. And that's what you feel when you get a glimpse of God. And you know you're going to get Him. You realize 1,000 years is nothing to wait. So great is the pull of the soul. So understand that. And forget the past. If you get the glimpse of God, the past never existed. And the future will not be filled with unfulfilled hopes and desires. It will be the eternal bliss of God now, right now. And so I'll close by just reading from the Master's little book. The Master said his beautiful words as follows. The soul cannot find its lost happiness in material things, though it seeks comfort in them. The soul, having lost its contact with God bliss, tries to satisfy itself with pseudo-pleasures of the senses. But the soul of even the most worldly person is inwardly conscious of its lost supernal bliss. And that is why it can never remain satisfied for long with temporary sense pleasures only, no matter how alluring they may be. They will not satisfy you until you turn and heed the call of the soul. The worldly man goes on searching for his lost happiness in God by flying from one sense pleasure to another. At last, when he suffers from satiety, he begins to seek God bliss within, where alone it can be found. And so no matter where you are, no matter how hopeless it seems, realize you're nearest to God because you need only one thing, and that's the presence of God. If you heed the soul call, you will know Him, because He is your very consciousness itself.